Morning.
Morning.
I'd like to thank you all for coming this morning. Your feedback, each of you got an evaluation form. Your feedback is very important. Please turn it in at the end of this presentation, or you've got till Wednesday, April 29th to turn it in. It's my pleasure to introduce our first candidate. Some of you may recognize him, Dr. Kappeler. Dr. Kappeler has had a 35-year relationship with EKU. His roles have ranged from student, foundation professor, to chair, and in his current position as associate dean for our college. Dr. Kappeler is here today to give us a brief presentation to start with, and then we'll open the floor to any questions. I'll turn it over to Dr. Kappeler.
I'm going to be brief because this session is really for you all to ask me questions and to interrogate me and test me and try to find out the information that you need to know in making your selection or your determination for your next dean. I do want to say though that at least in my 40 years of higher education, we're probably at a fairly difficult stage for higher education in Kentucky. There are continual cutbacks in funding. There's some jaundice amongst the public concerning the value and quality of higher education. So we're in and I won't bore you with it, but we're in fairly perilous time. But there's also a lot of potentials with changes that are going on. And I think the college is in a very good position to capitalize on those potentials, to grow new programs, to develop some opportunities with external agencies. But I think probably the buzzword now would be sustainability and how we continue to grow and prosper in a time of growing austerity. And I think I have some of the skills to bring to the deanship an ability to do that. I would also say that each one of the deans that I've served under has brought something to the college that was important. I think Truett brought some grants and some new faculty in. Gary brought a little bit of an academic orientation, and Dean Alt has brought a foundation of fiscal accountability and management and a kind of a humanity to the college that maybe previous deans didn't have. And I guess I would want to be your dean, or you to consider me to be your dean, to build on that foundation. And I think those of you who know me will find that I'm a fair and equitable kind of guy, and that I try to treat everyone with dignity and respect. But there's an agenda that we need to work on in the college. There's some problems that we need to address. We need to spend some time building policy and processes. We need to spend some time being transparent. We need to raise the academic level and quality of a lot of our programs, and we need to enhance the working life and salaries of the staff. And those are a few of the things that I would try to work on and support the faculty in what they do. I'd be happy to talk about specifics or answer any questions that you may have. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time giving you a brief introduction and not waste all your time with my ideas, but answer the things that you want to hear. So please ask anything that you'd like. Otherwise, I do have 4 more pages of notes. It usually works with classes, so. Yes.
Would you have any plans on making changes to the structure of the college?
I guess that's, I don't want to sound like Bill Clinton, but that depends on how you define the structure. But generally not. I think our structure works very well. I mean, we might tweak a little bit in the 2 schools. For example, I could envision eventually EMC having their own department. I could envision eventually maybe Homeland Security breaking out into a department. I don't think one size fits all. I think upstairs on the 4th floor, Justice Studies is pretty comfortable being a conglomerate. There may be a little bit of tension in reporting to 2 chairs, but I think those are all very minor types of adjustments. There is a possibility, however, of starting a 3rd school if we could poach some other programs, but I don't see any major structural changes. Did that answer your question? Yeah. Did you have any more specifics about that you would like to follow up with? Okay. Yes.
Looking across campus, the university see our percentage of the international students as being both a good thing and in some ways a bad thing. Bad in that it's a bit top heavy. So I wonder how you, top heavy in this, it could go away at any time. And the fear is that if SACM were to say, we want to move from EKU to someplace else, that could be a huge issue financially for EKU. So I wonder, how do you view internationalization for the college? How do you see strengthening that? Do you see any way to make that more of a linchpin for the college? Do you think that should be? And if so, how do we optimize that for our college?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it is essential for the university, and we do have a disproportionate number of international students, and I think we have to continue growing that, and we have to court those students. But I also think that we're probably going to have to provide a little bit more support for international students at the college level, and that requires redistribution of some resources. It also probably requires for us to reach out and do some international programs to build kind of a sustainable pipeline. So we are in conversations with the Saudis and with a couple other countries about trying to provide a blend between on-site and online education to help secure those pipelines. But that's the sustainability factor. We have to continue to reach out, but we also have to provide them the services they need in-house to retain them and keep the attraction. And the university often doesn't have the funding that it needs to do that, but it's also important that we do it at the ground level. And if you look at some of the things we've done in the college that are very different than other universities and other colleges, you know, we've provided our students with our own advising center. We have our own marketing people. We have our own accounting people. We've done that all in-house without a lot of university funding and support, and I think probably one of the next steps is to build some student success programs and some support for international students. And you know, since you mentioned that, not just international students, more diverse students, a more diverse population. So we need to enhance our recruiting and go into areas like Louisville and Atlanta and other places and begin recruiting a wider diversity of students, faculty, and staff. And that can't be lip service. I mean, there has to be tangible programs and monies devoted for those initiatives. And what I know about the budget and dealing in the last 2 years pretty intimately with the budget, we have those resources. We just have to allocate them wisely and build those infrastructures.
So, talked about just its complexity and size. And I was wondering if you could give us a sense of what's facing a team in terms of winning the big picture and the whole that.
Probably a lot of gray hair. Well, you know, I don't know if everyone knows this, but about $85 million run through this building every year that has to be managed, and that's a variety of sources, from grants to university monies. But you're talking about a pretty big operation. We have about 60 faculty members, and that's full-time faculty members. We have about 600 employees, if you count the employees in grants and contracts in TRC. So it's a pretty big operation, but we're fortunate that we have a good structure too. We have our chairs, we have our directors that that are direct reports to the dean. So it's a complex operation. We have about 3,200 students, multiple graduate programs. We have 4 or 5 online programs, and those things continue to grow. So it's a very big operation, and it's a lot of moving parts, a lot of human lives involved, a lot of employees, and they all have to get paid, and they all have to be taken care of, and hopefully they all have some sense of being connected to the dean's office. And I guess that's one of the things that I would like to bring about is a little bit more connection between the dean's office and the staff and the faculty and the employers. Not to mention, we have about 40 graduate assistants who are actually employees of the university also that have to be taken care of. So it's a big enterprise. And in big enterprises you have complex issues and problems and differences of opinion, and those all have to be worked out. So it's a big job. The last couple of years I've just really learned how big of an operation it is. So I'm pretty much amazed at Dean Alt and his ability to make all the cogs in the wheel continue to run. I don't know if that was responsive enough, Pete, but that's kind of an overview of it. It fills your day, I can tell you that. This is your all's time. I promise I won't take offense to anything you ask.
Since you got 4 pages, that's my last question.
Sure.
Since we've been here, there's been an ebb and flow down to the discussion of doctrine. And obviously, none of us have personal laws and what might happen. I just wanted to speak to what your thoughts are, the direction that that might take, what you see receptivity being,
yeah, well, that's a key question. I mean, that's really important. I personally believe that for the college to go to the next level, for us to really play nationally and internationally, we're going to have a doctoral program. And I think we've kind of reached the zenith as a master's granting institution. Now, we can improve, most certainly, and we can hire better faculty and recruit more students. But if we're going to get international exposure and we're going to play with the big boys, so to speak, we're going to have a doctoral program. That having been said, a dean doesn't determine that. It's ultimately the faculty who are going to, either go along with that or not. But I would be very supportive of it. Now, I'm also realistic, and given the legislation in Kentucky that prohibits us granting a PhD at this point in time, that's a pretty big haul to get that changed. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's going to take a lot of political will above the level of the dean. That having been said, I feel so strongly that we need that to raise our academic profile that I would be willing to pitch and support perhaps a professional doctorate. And by that, what I mean is a D something or another, right? A D crim or something like that. And I know that's not popular because the PhD is the gold standard in our field, but I think we have such accomplished faculty that we could start with a D crim, make it very small, be very selective about the students that we admit, really mint out students that are so well prepared that they'll enter the market very easily. And I think then that's a natural stepping stone then for arguing for the PhD. Now, if I had my way, we would have a PhD tomorrow. But it takes a lot of people farther up the food chain than I am to make that come about. And I think there's some level of support there, but it has to be timed in a certain way. President Benson would have to be willing to get behind it, and there's a lot of political groundwork that would have to be laid for it. But it's only one clause in a statute, you know. But getting that one clause changed is going to be, I think, fairly difficult, because obviously U of L and UK want to retain that in just their domain. But since we are a program of distinction, I don't see it being unreasonable to argue that we should also be able to grant the PhD. So I would continue to push and request for that, but I think if we can't get that right away, we really should move forward with with a professional doctorate or two in the college. And I'm a little bit concerned that we didn't get it in front of these other colleges in the university to have them. You know, they're doing the D-Psych, et cetera. I know not all the ideas, but I know the pros and the cons of it, and I know why people are reluctant. But I think that this college's faculty would do it in a way that we would have a superb program. It wouldn't be a second-rate program. And that costs money too, by the way. Yes.
Just to expand on that doctoral program. So if I remember correctly, are there two programs left authorized with the state? And if that's correct, do you view our college as being in line to be able to get one of those two practicing doctorates, or are we going to have to go back and have further legislation or approval from?
No, I think, I can't swear to this, but I think there are two remaining, and I think the CPE is not going to review that until they're all, grant anymore until they're all filled, and then it would require, I think, SACS review and CPE approval to add additional ones. So we're kind of in a spot where we need to kind of pull the trigger, make our decision, and move forward if we're gonna do that. Was that responsive? I mean, I think that's my understanding also. I've worked with most of y'all for 30 years. I mean, you can ask any question you want. Yeah. Yes, sir.
If you would, tell us about where you place on a plane the importance of teaching, service, and scholarship, and how you value those from your perspective as the future leader.
Right. Well, this is going to sound contrived, but I'll be sincere, right? I think they're all equally important, and they all play on one another, right? So I think we have to be excellent teachers. That's the primary goal of the institution. That's what we do. But I think also to be an excellent teacher, you have to be an engaged researcher. Now, does that mean you have to be publishing, 4 or 5 articles every year? I don't think so. But I think if you're not engaged in the science, if you will, or the literature and contributing to that literature, you're not going to be as effective of a teacher. As far as service goes, service is also an important component of doing research and teaching. So we go out and do service for particularly, at least me, for agencies. We bring those lessons either into the literature as research, but we most certainly bring them back into the classroom. Now, that having been said, this is a complex and huge college. It's a big tent, right? We can afford to have people who focus 99% of their time just on teaching. We can afford to have people who are a little bit more research-oriented and people who are more service-oriented. I think it's the balance that we have to achieve. Not just the balance with an individual faculty member, but the balance of the college overall. And I think we always have to strive to maintain that balance. But I think there are 3 equally important parts, because if you never pick up a book, you never go into the field, you're not going to be a very good and effective teacher. On the other side of the coin, if you're not an effective teacher, we're not turning out the next generation of scholars either, or good practitioners. So I think it's a big tent, but I think we always have to strive for a balance that serves the interests of the college and the university and our student body. But you know, there can be deviation. Deviation is okay. You know, if you're the next great Nobel Prize winner, then I'll support you having lots of release time. You know? But if you're not a good teacher and you're not a good researcher and you're not doing any service, then you're probably not going to get a whole lot of benefits. That's being as candid as I can. This is free.
My question is more on the organization of the whole college, and as a relatively new chair, very little actually have I had to deal with the dean because of how they all have constructed the division of duties, etc., so on. How do you view that as being the same, as changing?
So well, I would like to have continue to have contact with the faculty. I mean, part of what makes the job enjoyable is being able to talk with my colleagues, right? So I would like the dean's office to be even more accessible, and should you want me to be your dean, I would like to be as accessible as possible. I also know reality of, there's lots of meetings and you go all day long, and sometimes you're on main campus and you're out in the field. So the dean will never be as accessible as a chair or an associate dean. That having been said, I don't believe in a rigid chain of command that allows for problems to persist. So I would like to have somewhat of an open door policy. I'm hoping, and I can't promise you, I'm hoping that we will at least be able to keep an associate dean, if not two, to handle some of the day-to-day questions and operations. But I would also like every faculty member, particularly the chairs, to feel free to walk into my office with a problem, kind of like they do now. But I know accessibility is hard, but I would like it to be transparent, open, and for all the direct reports to have access. But on the day-to-day things, an associate dean can get you your budget items, can give you basic information, can sign off on the paperwork that you need signed that day. I've watched Alan work very carefully, and Alan is a very good and industrious man. So sometimes it's a little daunting, but I can't imagine not doing it without that layer of support, especially how the university operates. I mean, there's some things that need to change. I mean, I don't think a dean needs to sign an exception form for a class for a student when the chair and the advisor approve it. I think we waste a lot of time because we don't push decisions down farther into the organization, and we don't maybe trust the way we should. And hopefully we can alleviate some of those bureaucratic things and give us more time to do the social and the interactions. But I would really be disappointed if I was not able to have the time with the chairs and the directors and the faculty that I enjoy now. Still free. Yes, sir.
One question I have is, I think we're all pretty familiar with what you do in this building, but can you talk a little bit about what you've done outside this building or across campus that would lend yourself to the dean's position?
Well, I handle all the curriculum changes with the CAA. I work with Lexington Police Department pretty regularly. I work with Lexington City government advancing the college and advancing master's programs. I've worked with the Graduate Council for 5 years when I was a graduate director. I meet periodically with the provost, trying to get person lines, trying to get faculty lines, trying to get hired. Lord knows I work too much with HR. indirectly, trying to get the hires through the process. They're pretty much, you know, across the board. I meet periodically with the other deans, and I meet with the associate deans. I have input into the extended campuses and their operations. I try to tap down unnecessary bureaucracy and paperwork pretty regularly. The chairs can tell you about some of the recent events, but I'm fairly active. I'm not real active in the other colleges, but I'm active representing this college to the main university and external constituents. I travel periodically, particularly for law enforcement events, and do a little bit of consulting in Tennessee, Ohio, and other places, and try to represent the university. Tuesday, I spent the entire day at the University of Louisville at the Southern Police Institute, giving lectures and presenting to their doctoral students to create opportunities for our master's students to go to that program. So I'm pretty active externally, but my primary focus is the college internally. Okay, now we're going into the charge you mode.
About our external campuses and you know, the moving issue that's been going on now for at least, 3 years, longer, as to what we're actually going to do with external for the regional campuses, how we're going to integrate it, how we're going to enhance it or cut it back, or what's your take on that?
Well, to be perfectly candid, I think the university hasn't come to a decision on that until, you know, or it hasn't been expressed to me, but until they do, we're going to be in a little bit of a limbo. However, if you look at the demographics of Kentucky, the service region demographics are continually shrinking. That having been said, we've been able to build at least one program pretty substantially in the last 5 to 8 years. We've gone from 20 majors to about 250 majors at the extended campuses. I think politically, the extended campuses, most of them are here to stay because those buildings were built by politicians to serve constituency, and I think probably we will always have some relationship with extended campuses and probably should. The biggest problem has been staffing. You know, unless you put full-time people at those sites, they have a tendency to flounder. And I think we're going to have to invest in those sites a little bit more. I think we're probably going to have to use college money to hire some full-time instructors who are at those sites. And that's part of the sustainability in the pipeline model. While the demographics don't look good, I don't think we've tapped the resources and the students that are available. And you know, we are a regional university, and that is our service region, so we have to be responsive to it. But there needs to be a little bit greater leadership on those issues, and whether it comes from the deans making decisions and appropriating funds to hire faculty, or it comes from the central administration, is to be seen. But I think given the competitive nature and the market dynamics that are being brought about on higher education today, we don't have much choice other than to more fully engage the regional campuses. I mean, that's one of our constituencies, and that's how we're going to build and sustain our enrollments. And, you know, the marketization of higher education is putting every university or pitting every university against every other university for resources and students. And if we miss an opportunity like that, we're not going to be able to sustain our growth in our revenues. I think that's just a fact of life. It's a challenge, though, because sometimes it's very difficult to get the most highly qualified academics to agree to live in Manchester or somewhere else. But I do think we can find very good master's level people to serve in those, at those sites. And I think we have to invest in it, and we have to know it's here. But we also have to know that the internet, and e-campus is eating a lot of that population too. But every student doesn't want to learn vis-a-vis the internet, Students want to have the classroom experience, and we're fortunate right now. Gas prices are cheap, so students are willing to drive a little bit. But when gas prices go back up, that commute is an economic hardship on a lot of these students, and some of these students are very economically challenged. Sir.
You had mentioned as part of your agenda vision as dean, addressing several issues. One of those was quality. I was wondering if you could provide some examples or illustrations of areas where you think the college can improve in quality.
Well, most certainly, I think none of us are perfect, including myself, especially myself. But I think we have some lapses in teaching areas. I think we can improve on our teaching. I think we can improve on our course design. I also think we can raise the level of our scholarly contributions. Everybody doesn't have to get a Nobel Prize, but most certainly we can be more engaged. And that's kind of a buzzword, but I think engagement is really important, and we're not as fully engaged as we should be. We don't provide opportunities for our students for movies and films and extracurricular activities as much as we should. We don't create a life for them other than, to go downtown and drink. And I think that's essential that the college do that. I also think that we have some faculty who are a little bit burnt out, particularly with the online stuff. When you teach 150 graduate students time and time again online, it takes its toll, So it's a balance. I mean, I think I'd like to see a little bit more scholarship out of the SSEM side of the house, if you will, a little bit more active scholarship there, and I'd like to see probably a little bit more emphasis on teaching on the other side of the house. So I think it's a balance, if you will, and the overall academic level for our students of what we're delivering, and I don't want to target individuals, but I think sometimes we dummy down a little too much, and I think students will live up to the expectations that we set, and if we raise those expectations a little bit, they'll meet the challenge, and we'll have a better product. So I would just like to lift up the academic quality kind of across the board, while respecting differences between different types of faculty. There are people who are very service-oriented and do a wonderful job. And there are people who are teaching-oriented and do a wonderful job. But I think we can all improve. And, one of the things that we don't do well, I think, is transition for new faculty coming in, orientation for them, laying out the expectations, and I think we can do a better job for that. And, not to get into the weeds, so to speak, but, it's probably not good practice to bring a new faculty member in and say, here's your 12 hours, you can teach 4 different classes your first semester, get going. We need to ratchet that down and give time for faculty to transition into their new role. So, I hope that wasn't too evasive.
We talked earlier about the era of series, and unfortunately, that becoming more and more normalized as part of our work, as opposed to just being sort of temporary thing, more ingrained in the way we think. And I just wondered if you had any sense about that shift as affected or modified the program distinction. For years now, we've kind of relied on that to do things that we obviously wouldn't otherwise be able to do. So, if you had any sense of that?
Well, I I don't think that I have any special insight into it. I can tell you, however, that from my work with the budget, that it's declined slightly over the last 8 years. And it declines not only when the state has a cutback, we suffer that cutback in the program of distinction, but when there are, for example, raises at the university, as President Benson gave when he first came in. Anyone who is on or is being funded, any faculty member who is being funded under the POD monies, we have to match that raise out of POD monies. So an increasingly larger portion of the program of distinction monies are being spent for personnel. I think approximately about 65% of all the POD monies that we have, not indirects, not other monies, just the program of distinction money, are spent on personnel. So when fringes go up, when there are bumps in salary, that takes a greater percentage out of the POD monies. So I think we have to be very cautious about continually adding personnel lines and faculty lines onto POD. And we have to be a little bit smarter about how we replace staff and how we replace faculty. And by that I mean, just because someone leaves the institution should not automatically mean that they are in fact replaced in that same position. It might be that we can collapse some staff positions. It may be that one program is growing faster than another program and we have to reallocate. But we have to be very careful because we're approaching kind of a zenith that if we go any farther, we won't have discretionary monies like to improve the building, to improve faculty development or staff development, to do travel or to do the research grants that we have, because if we eat it all up with personnel, you know, we're going to be back to where we were, and all we're doing is kind of subsidizing the costs for the university. So I think the austerity is here to stay, but I'm hopeful that we've kind of hit the zenith of that, and the economy is coming back a little bit, and that'll stabilize. But if it becomes a political agenda to continue to shrink government and shrink higher education, then it's something that we'll be facing continuously. And we're still in a better position than many universities and most colleges on campus. I mean, take a trip to the main campus and walk through the buildings and see. I mean, we have it really great here, you know. But I think we have to always be on guard about that possibility.
Are there any signs, vis-a-vis Frankfurt, that program distinctions across the state are stable?
Just in that continuation, I've heard no utterances of any drastic cuts or want to move away from that. I think if they diminish the program of distinction, then they're going to have to open up other avenues. They're going to have to change the service region. They're going to have to allow the doctoral programs to come in. If they're going to go to a full market-based model, then a lot of things are become off the table legislatively. But no, I've not heard anything negative to the contrary, the ultimate demise of the program of distinction. Well, if that's it, thank you very much for your time, and feel free to stop by my office anytime you want if you had any questions that you didn't want to air in a public forum. I appreciate you taking the time to come out and visit with me on a Friday when I know you have lots more important things to do than to hear my stuff. But thank you very much.